Welcome to Basketball U. If you're new to Basketball U, make sure you slam dunk that subscribe button. And just to make sure you don't miss a thing, make sure you tap that notification bell right after you hit that subscribe button. So I've been wondering this for a long time. How did the NBA teams come up with the team names? Because some of the team names make absolutely no sense for where they are actually located. For instance, what is a Los Angeles Laker? I see beaches, I see Hollywood, and I see palm trees? So what is a Laker? And what exactly is a Clipper? I mean, those are just two names I don't get. And I've been to California a lot, and I haven't seen either of those things floating around the Hollywood stars. Okay, sorry for that rant, but usually a team name is based by their location, which becomes their team nickname. And that's the thing that we are going to discuss today. Again, like I said, you probably don't get it. I don't either. Imagine somebody who doesn't have a clue about basketball. So let's start with the oldest team in the NBA, Sacramento Kings. They started in 1923 as the Rochester Seagrams. I'm not even going to try to find out what a Seagram is. But anyway, let's get back on track. When they joined the NBL, they renamed themselves as the Rochester Royals. And in 1957, they moved to Cincinnati. And then in 1972, they moved to Kansas City. And because of the baseball team, the Kansas City Royals, they had to change their names to the King. Then in 1985, they moved to the West Coast of Sacramento. Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons were actually an original team that was a part of the NBL. In 1941, they were called the Fort Wayne Zoner Pistons because the owner of the company had Pistons, and that is how they have the name. They didn't make enough money with the lack of support by the community, so they made the move to Detroit in 1957. Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks were originally the Buffalo Bisons in 1946 when being a part of the NBL. So they only attempted to play in Buffalo for 38 days. And then once they thought they weren't getting any support, they left Davenport, Iowa. Not really sure people were going to be that interested in basketball, especially a pro team, and it wasn't as exciting as it is today. So then they went to a different location where they turned into the Tri-City Blackhawks. In 1951, they moved to Milwaukee and shortened that name to Hawks. And then said Milwaukee wasn't it. And then they moved to St. Louis, where they had a little dispute over the arena space and scheduling. So they got sold and moved to Atlanta. Boston Celtics. This one isn't as complicated as the previous teams. In 1946, they were a part of the BAA, and the name Celtics came from Celtic or Celtic, depending on who you ask. So in short, many Irish people moved to Boston, and it's basically a perfect fit for the name. Golden State Warriors. They were based out of Philly and were a part of the BAA in 1946. 1962, they were purchased by another owner and made the move to California. Majority of their games were played in Oakland, but they did play a few games in San Fran and just decided it would be a better representation if they represented the area and statewide as a whole. So in 1971, they called it Golden State, which happens to be the nickname of California. New York Knicks. Knicks is short for Knickerbocker. And this was in reference to Dutch settlers, and it was used to describe most people in New York. So there you have it. The New York Knicks. Philadelphia 76ers. They were in the NBL in 1946, and they were called the Syracuse Nationals. And they made a move in 1963, right after the Philadelphia Warriors left. Timing is everything, right? They had a contest for the rename of the team, and the choice was the 76ers. Los Angeles Lakers. In 1947, the Detroit Gems were taken over and relocated to Minneapolis, and thus the name the Lakers because of the 10,000 lakes. After low attendance and low fan support, the move to LA was made in 1960, and even though the name doesn't fit, it's one of the biggest and most successful franchises in NBA history. Washington Wizards, the first NBA expansion team. Here's a quick breakdown, because this one is ugly. Found in 1961, Chicago Packers. And then in 1962, the name changed to the Zephyrs. In 1963, they moved to Baltimore and became the Bullets. Then moved to DC, but called themselves Capitol. But then changed it to Washington Bullets in 1974. Then in the mid-90s, switched to the Wizards. That was a lot, but we got it done. On to the next. Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls started up in 1966. and the name has stuck since. And you might have heard of them before because of a guy who was pretty good. I think his initials are MJ?
Brooklyn Nets.
In 1967, New Jersey Americans was an ABA team. They couldn't be in New York where they originally tried to be because the NBA pressured them out of the state. In 1968, they switched over to the New York Nets because of the move to Long Island. They chose the Nets not only because it relates to basketball, but the other New York teams were Mets and Jets, so it made perfect sense, right? Then they moved back to New Jersey and kept the Nets name, and then in 2012, they moved back to New York, and there we have it, the Brooklyn Nets.
Denver Nuggets.
Denver Larks, Denver Rockets. This is what the Nuggets were named while in the ABA, but in 1974, when making the move to the NBA, they changed it to the Nuggets from the Rockets. It also paid respect to the mining industry, and also because there was already a team named that.
Houston Rockets.
1967, in San Diego, the Rockets were discovered and the team got relocated, and the Rockets name worked perfectly because of close ties to the space industry.
Indiana Pacers.
Originally a ABA franchise team in 1967. Pacers name comes from the way horses run and also the pace car that's used for the pace of a race. Hey, that rhymes. Anyway, moving along.
Oklahoma City Thunder.
Formerly known as the Seattle Supersonics in 1967, they were the first sports franchise and then they relocated to OKC, where they became the Thunder.
San Antonio Spurs.
In 1967, this team was called the Dallas Chaparrals. Basically, it was named after a hotel room. Wild, I know. But in 1973, made the move to San Antonio and became the Spurs, which sounds a lot better.
Milwaukee Bucks.
In 1968, they held a contest to name the team, and it turned out to be the Robins. But that didn't sound appealing at all. So they went with the state animal and named it the Bucks.
Phoenix Suns.
In 1968, became the first major sports franchise in Arizona. They held a contest and they tried the Rattlers, Scorpions, and Thunderbirds. The name Sun started to make more sense because it is one of the hottest places in the 50 states. If you haven't been there, you will understand when you touch down here.
Cleveland Cavaliers.
In 1970, they were a new expansion team, and a fan vote for the name of the team went something like the Jays, the Foresters, the Towers, the Presidents. Cavaliers ended up being the name. It never changed.
Portland Trailblazers.
In 1970, the Trailblazers were born. That's where I'm going with the story. Let's move forward.
Los Angeles Clippers.
In 1970, Buffalo Braves owner swapped teams with Boston Celtics, and this owner lived in California. So he moved Buffalo Braves to San Diego, which now was renamed Clippers for the selling ships. Then once the team was sold, they moved them to LA.
Utah Jazz.
In 1974, the New Orleans Jazz was the perfect name for the location, and this would have stayed perfect if they wouldn't have made the move to Utah. Financial troubles prompted the team for the move. They kept the name, and as of today, they are still the Jazz.
Dallas Mavericks.
In 1980, they became an expansion team, and the Dallas Mavericks were named after the TV show Mavericks.
Charlotte Hornets.
In 1988, the original team name was Charlotte Spirit, and they had another contest and the Hornets won. In 2003, the Bobcats became a new team, and then Michael Jordan came in around 2010, and basically the Bobcats name didn't last, which then revived the Hornets.
Miami Heat.
In 1988, Miami Heat were named the Heat, beating out names like Sharks, Barracudas, and Beaches.
Minnesota Timberwolves.
In 1989, fans decided between two names, Polars and Timberwolves. They figured Timberwolves would be more marketable than the Polars.
Orlando Magic.
This Orlando team in 1989 started playing, and the fans chose the name Magic. And there we have it.
Toronto Raptors.
Originally from the BAA, they were the Toronto Huskies. So they decided that the fans should decide, and they came up with the Raptors. Kind of reminds me of Jurassic Park.
Memphis Grizzlies.
In 1995, Vancouver Grizzlies came from the fans. And then in 2001, they moved to Memphis and kept the name.
New Orleans Pelicans.
When the Charlotte Hornets were allowed to move into New Orleans, they kept the name, the New Orleans Hornets. The team temporarily went to Oklahoma City when there was a hurricane in Louisiana. After the new owner purchased the New Orleans Hornets, they decided to change the name, but they changed it because they weren't able to keep the Hornets name due to the old Charlotte team. And they wanted a better name for the region, so they went with the state bird, which is a pelican. And there you have it. All the NBA teams and pretty much how they got their names. I'm tired. I'm gonna go take a nap. Hope you enjoyed this video. This is Basketball U. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, follow all of our social medias right there in the description to keep yourself up to date, as this channel will have a lot of basketball, a lot of players, and a lot of training and more information on how to play the game of basketball. Remember, someone's always working. Are you?